Welcome to the World War I History Podcast, produced by the MacArthur Memorial. We invite you to follow us on Twitter at MacArthur1880 or find the General Douglas MacArthur Memorial on Facebook. This podcast was sponsored by the Ernst and Gertrude Tico Charitable Foundation. Welcome, everyone. My name is Amanda Williams, and joining me is Jim Zobel, MacArthur Memorial Archivist. And we are both historians here at the MacArthur Memorial. And today we're going to be talking about General MacArthur's second award of the Distinguished Service Cross. Now, in the winter of 1918, General John J. Pershing presented then Brigadier General Douglas MacArthur with his second Distinguished Service Cross. And this award was for actions in France at the Côte de Châtillon. And this was between October 14th and 16th, 1918. Now, the citation ends with a very interesting phrase. On a field where courage was the rule, his courage was the dominant feature. So what happened there during those days, and what do we know about the circumstances behind this award? And so that's what we're going to dive into today. Jim, set the stage for us. It's early October 1918. Where is MacArthur? What are his responsibilities?
Now he's the brigadier commanding the 84th Brigade, which is the 167th Alabama and the 168th Iowa. He'd been chief of staff before that, so his whole duties were kind of facilitating everything the division needed to, move, do operations, things like that. Make sure all supplies, logistics, everything. Now he's concentrated just on this brigade because now he's a battlefield commander. He had been appointed head of the 84th Brigade at the end of that Ork River campaign, the Einmarn offensive, and then took them through the Battle of Saint-Mihiel. And that end of September, all the way through the early part of October, they were right there in the Essay Pond sector, which is right part of Saint-Mihiel. And they were kind of doing patrolling and digging trenches and just keeping the defense of that line, while most of the rest of the army moved to the Meuse-Argonne, because that was the next plan that was to take place as the French and the British to the north and the Americans to the south start moving to that northwest or northeast sector of France, right along the border of Belgium and the Meuse River. Early October, they get the call to come in because, as you know, they like those first 7 divisions that go in the Meuse-Argonne, they just get pretty much slaughtered. A lot of green divisions had gone in. A 35th Division had gone in the area where MacArthur's area is going to be. And after that, they had put in the Army's, best division of regulars was the 1st Division, which is under Charles Summerall. Summerall had been the artillery brigade commander for the Rainbow Division at the beginning of the war, but then he got transferred into the infantry and he took over the 1st Division. And they as well, in this area were what they call the Roman Heights, the Kriemhilde-Stellung German line. It's the Hindenburg line. And these heights really control that whole area. And both the 35th and the 1st had gone through in that area. To the right of that, the 26th Division, and then the 32nd had gone in. And then on the left, you get the 82nd Division going. And they all get clobbered because the Germans hold these heights. And especially this one place, the Côte de Châtillon, which we were talking about today. And it kind of dominates the region because these hills kind of pop off a flat plain. And so most of the area around the Côte to the left of it is kind of a flat trajectory of land where these towns, Landres, Saint-Georges, and Saint-Georges are. And so that's where the 83rd Brigade of the Rainbow Division is going to move into. And they get called in to come in early October, and they go and they set up camp around Montfaucon. And they're there for about a week just getting rained on in just miserable conditions. And then finally about the 9th, 10th, they're told you're going to move into this area where the 1st Division has just pulled out of. And so they moved to their area called Sommerance, Exermont, which are right to the south of this Landres, Saint-Georges, and the Romaine Heights. And so they'll move into this area, and they move in the way they always do. The 83rd Brigade is on the left, 84th Brigade is on the right, and you'll have the Ohio, the New York, and then the Alabama and the Iowa groups. And those Ohio and New York guys, they're going to be moving across that flat trajectory, trying to take this area in front of them, these towns, which is all barbed wire, which is all rifle pits, trenches, everything else. And so as they're going to move forward, they're not only going to take everything that's coming in front of them, but the Côte de Châtillon is going to be hammering them from the flank as well. And that's the way it is for the 32nd Division, which is to the right of the rainbow, because the Côte dominates this position, the Côte de Marie Dame, which they're trying to take, Dame Marie. And so it really is the linchpin. And MacArthur figures that out. When he gets there on the 11th, he sets up probably about a mile back from that Côte de Châtillon at a place called La New Forge, which is like a farm. And the 84th Brigade headquarters is there. And Walter Bayer with the 167th Regiment, he's the commander of that regiment, because the main commander, this guy called Screws, is out because he's sick. At Montfaucon, where they're in that rain, he got the flu as everybody else does. And so Bayer is there at headquarters, which is right next to that La New Forge where MacArthur is, and says they meet up that night and they're just inhaling all sorts of gas, tear gas, Eperite gas, everything, and just getting obliterated by it till they finally have to, move back from where they are, because the whole time they're just under fire from the Germans. And MacArthur is the kind of guy, and we know this, he goes out on these recons to look at the area where he's going to have to take. And so on the 12th, he goes out with Walter Wolfe. And Walter Wolfe is his chief of staff of the 84th Brigade. And they move forward to look at those hills they're going to have to go over, as well as to get a view of the Côte de Châtillon. And Wolfe says they get hammered with gas that night. MacArthur doesn't wear a gas mask, never does. And Wolfe does. And he said that MacArthur inhaled so much gas, he was, throwing up completely. He thought he was done, thought he was not going to be there for the rest of anything that was going on. Now, at the same time all this is going on, you've got the Alabama groups as well as the Iowa groups. They're doing recon into this area of the Romaine Heights, which is with the Hill 282, Hill 263, Hill 242, Hill 288, all these hills which are measured by how tall they are. And so they're going to have to move through these. The Germans are all on them. And it comes down to that the battle will really start on the 14th. And that's when they start moving. And immediately, those guys on the left, they're going to get stalled out, hammered. They'll bring in tanks to try and help them on the 15th, but that's not going to work. They all bog down. And it's because they're just getting hammered by what's on top of the Côte. And MacArthur realizes this and says, this is the key to everything. We have to put this in. He goes to Summerall, who's the 5th Corps commander, who they're under, because that's the guy who did have the 1st Division before, but he did such a good job they made him the Corps commander. And then he goes to Menaher, who's the head of the 42nd Division, says, we need to put an operation to take these heights. And even Summerall had realized that, because MacArthur said he came to visit him on the 11th, which was that first night they got there, and said, we have to have the Côte, and that's going to be the main goal of what this is all about. Now, after those first days, that first day when the Ohio and the New York, and they just get slaughtered there, then Summerall really puts the pressure on. This is going to be what we have to take. We have to take it immediately. And that day, the 14th, the Iowa group had moved out. They had moved over one of the first main hills, and they'd gotten onto that Hill 288. And that's the hill that's almost right in front of where the Côte is. The Alabama guys, they were kind of in this ravine, and they moved up right to the front of the Bois de Romaine, which is right in front of the Côte de Châtillon. And the Côte de Châtillon is just all barbed wire, pillboxes, everything else. So the Alabama's stuck there for the next 2 days. I mean, they make it to that second place where, and that's where they'll jump off when they make the move. But they are then waiting for the Iowa group to come up onto them. Now, the 14th, when all those troops get slaughtered on the left, then Summerall's like, we have to have that tonight. And MacArthur orders this bayonet attack, for that night. No guns to be fired. And everybody in the Alabama as well as the Iowa knows this is just ridiculous, And Cook, who wrote the book about the Rainbow Division, says that MacArthur was thinking maybe back to that Croix Rouge battle, where they had taken it just by storming it. But the thing is that the Croix Rouge wasn't ringed with the type of barbed wire it is. So Walter Bayer, who's that 167th guy, he gets a hold of MacArthur and says, this isn't going to work. We can't do that. And so they rescind that order. The next day, the 15th, the troops in the New York and Ohio are pretty much bogged down. That Alabama group is bogged down. But Lloyd Ross, who's the commander of the 1st Battalion of that Iowa group, the regiment. He's really, the guy who's the linchpin of everything. And they move over those hills and get right to almost where they're at the jump off point to go up to the Côte, which is they call the Tuileries farm and the Musard farm are right there in front of the Côte de Châtillon. MacArthur is with those groups, the Iowa group, the whole time as they're moving forward. And that's what his citation comes, is from those days of the 14th through the 16th. So we know that because of Fraser Hunt's book, and Fraser Hunt was a journalist there at that time, and he's with the Rainbow. And he, knows that he's there one day when MacArthur comes back through those drives over the hills, and he got right into the mix of a fight between a platoon of 168 soldiers and a German machine gun nest that was there on Hill 288, and caught some bullets through his clothes. And so he's up there in it, he's a brigadier general. He's not right in there with the platoons, fighting up into all these things, but he's behind, reforming the lines, working with everybody, making sure that supplies, keeping the stragglers, from pushing back. And so he's very much part of this drive, and he's very much, a part of being into it. But, as far as being like in, exact combat, with the troops right up front, no, but that's not where he's supposed to be, and a lot of people have made a lot of things like, well, he wasn't really, well, yeah, but, that's his job, he's doing what his job is. And he never said that, even if you look at reminiscences or anywhere else, he never said that I was in the direct middle of the combat. It was like the groups did this, they all did this, this was all their battle, and that's, people talk about, MacArthur being, oh, it's, where's my medal and everything, but really when asked about things as things would come on, he would give the credit to a lot of other people. So the 14th through the 16th, they're driving, he's with them the whole time, kind of controlling things, making sure they have everything they need. And then they get to the 16th. And on the night of the 15th, Walter Bear was ordered back to MacArthur's headquarters. And Bear is the Alabama guy. And he comes back to MacArthur's headquarters, and Cooper wins there. He's with the 151st Machine Gun Battalion, as well as the Lloyd Ross of that 168th Battalion. Matthew Tinley, who runs the 168th as well. And they all get together about what they're going to do. And Bear had met with the head of the 3rd Battalion of the Alabama, Robbie Norris, right before that. And Bear was like, we're going to, make this move tomorrow morning, and we'll go through this. We're going to make the drive up. And Fowler was like, okay, well, is anybody going to ask me what I want to do? And Fowler had found this cut where he could get down in front of the position he was in and not be hit by the Germans in front of him, and he could make a move into the 168th sector and then maybe come around, around the Côte. And that's what he tells Bear he wants to do. So Bear goes to this meeting on the night of the 15th before the big attack, and MacArthur's sitting there and says, Summerall's going to give us a call. And Summerall calls and says, you've got to take the Côte tomorrow by 6 p.m. MacArthur says, all right, if we don't, you'll have a list of 5,000 casualties. I'll be at the head of it. Bear goes to MacArthur, says, look, I've got this plan. He doesn't tell him it's Robbie Norris's, decision to go to the right and whatnot. But they had found out that there was a cut in the wire that the Germans used to come and maintain the wire. And MacArthur goes, yep, that's there, because then he produces these photographs, aerial photographs, first type of aerial reconnaissance really going on that they've taken of the Côte, which shows where this break is. Those are all up at the University of Michigan with William Hughes's papers. Hughes was the chief of staff at this point. And so it's kind of like this conglomeration of everybody's ideas that come together to put this thing together. So the next morning, the 167th 3rd Battalion makes that drive into the 168th sector. They get through the wire, and they get around the side of the Côte. And that same morning, Ross takes his guys. They totally capture Hill 288. They totally capture the Tuileries farm there, and then they make a move around to the backside, because they had realized in those photographs that the barbed wire kind of petered out around to the backside of it. MacArthur is there at the wire. When they go in, we know that because stories that came out in 1942 that Pershing told George Duncan, who was the head of the 82nd Brigade, about MacArthur going up to the commander that was going in and said, this is all on you. Everything that's going to happen right now is because of you. You've got to do this. I can see that you're going to do it. You've earned the DSC. And supposedly MacArthur gave him his own DSC, at that point, this leadership thing. I can see that you're going to do this.
MacArthur gave him the DSC MacArthur had been awarded several months earlier.
Been awarded before, action. Right. And that's the story, and for the longest time, I thought, okay, yeah, it's a story. But then I found a letter that was written to MacArthur by Ravi Norris in 1942. And Ravi Norris writes right on there, it was to me that you gave the DSC at the Côte. So to me, that shows that, it did happen, and MacArthur was there at the wire.
You mentioned Fraser Hunt and that letter. What other sources do we have about MacArthur?
Well, Lloyd Ross, who's that head of that 168, he wrote a memoir about it. As well, Baer wrote about it. He wrote about those meetings, with MacArthur and the gas. Walter Wolf, he writes about the gas attack MacArthur gets on the 12th. As well, you've got Ravi Norris wrote an account of what happened. And then, and like I said, MacArthur's, in his reminiscence, it's a very small part. He pretty much, gives the this is the plan we came up with, and this is what they did. Ravi Norris, that morning, he is going to control it from the back, kind of like MacArthur controls the whole brigade from the back. Ravi Norris will control that regiment, the 3rd Battalion that goes in there, that battalion, and he gives his captain, Thomas Fallaw, the control of this group. Fallaw gets them through the wire. They get up to the left of the side. This is almost the same time that Lloyd Ross's group has gotten his 1st Battalion around the other side of the hill. They're not in contact. But then word comes through Fallaw, through Ravi Norris, gets to MacArthur, who is on, we believe, on Hill 263, because you can see everything on the Côte going on at that point. And there's a liaison with the 167th that had been there ever since they got to France, named Maurice Johan. And he's this guy who's going to be a great friend of MacArthur's for the rest of his life. He runs this big winery, but he's a colonel in the French army. And when the word comes through that Norris, or that Fallaw and Norris are ready to go on this one side, they need a signal. Johan runs around the position around Tuileries Farm and runs to get a hold of Ross to tell him, what the plan is. And so that's how it all comes together. And then they make this, they blow the whistle 3 times. And right before the attack was going off, Lieutenant Colonel came to control the backside where Ravi Norris was. And he, which keeping the stragglers, everybody in line, keeping everything going. And so Norris goes to join Fallaw. He gets shot, as soon as he comes through the wire. And then they make a joint attack on the top. And this is about 4 o'clock, 2:30 in the afternoon. And by 4 o'clock, they've got the heights, and that's it. I mean, once they've got that, the Hindenburg line's kind of open. The British have broken through at the same time up north, as well as the French have broken through. And so within a couple of weeks, you're gonna have the end come. Because this is October 16th now, and by the 11th, it's going to be over. The 2nd Division will come in right after this, and they'll move right through the 42nd Division. So they did it once again. MacArthur is put up for the, I think that he gets the DSC, but then they review it for the Medal of Honor, because Summerall and Menaher both wanted to give him the Medal of Honor for this, but it comes down to that review board, that'll.
We tend to get questions from people wanting to know why he does not receive a Medal of Honor in World War I. He had received his first DSC several months before the one we're talking about today. A few months after this award, he gets a Distinguished Service Medal, 7 citation stars that are now silver stars, but no Medal of Honor. And as you said, I think Summerall does kind of put him forward for a Medal of Honor, but people have speculated that his Distinguished Service Cross from this action on this day is a downgrade of the Medal of Honor, because Pershing doesn't see it as something that he wants to give general officers. Is there evidence of that? Is that what the 2nd Distinguished Service Cross is? Just a downgrade?
I've heard that about, Pershing and not wanting to give the Medal of Honor to general officers, but I don't, Is there,
I've never
you ever
seen
make a statement,
of that,
or anything like that? But the thing is like I said, I think he was awarded the DSC, and then it's reviewed for Medal of Honor, because both Summerall and Menaher, are like, he should get the medal, because they do a review. They come down to review if he should get the Medal of Honor. And the thing is they do a review, and they go to the Rainbow Division, and they're like, okay, we've done a review of these people, and but MacArthur's, doesn't meet the criteria. Who do you think should get the Medal of Honor? And Hughes is like, every single person in this division thinks that MacArthur should get the Medal of Honor. I've got I've got 1,000 affidavits of everybody who's seen him since day one, being up there, at everything. And, people talk about him being a talker, but like we've talked before, he doesn't talk about World War One very much.
Right.
He doesn't, write about everything that happens. And I think that's, and we see that a lot with, a lot of these people that are in direct combat. They don't talk about it.
Right.
It's something that gets suppressed inside. They'll talk about other people, about who they were there with,
right.
And they might talk to some people, but a lot of it is that way, and that's what I mean. And we've said that before. Like Garreau, the 4th Army commander, who says that MacArthur is the greatest officer, the most bravest, most he's been in every action, that I've never met an officer like him, and this is a guy who's got a Garreau, that is, who's got a fantasy career that's just unbelievable. He's met people, just from all walks of life, and he says MacArthur, but we're like, what did he see? Because MacArthur doesn't go through, point by point, this is what happened, this is what happened. And there was that book that was written by that guy Robert Farrell, where he says that MacArthur wasn't there, and everybody else lied, and only I know the truth, which was just garbage. And MacArthur didn't lie about anything, because he did have the frontline experience. Everybody knew it. Everybody said so. Weller and White, they both write the affidavits. They were with MacArthur the whole time, there on the coat. They say, they don't say he's right in the middle of the top of the coat, in the middle of the fight, but they say he's the one that, manipulates everybody, that gets everything, still going, keeping it going, and that's what they were putting him up for, So is it a downgrade? Pershing, he approves that major generalship, because the next day they want to promote him to major general.
Right.
And Pershing approves that, but it's really the War Department that says no to that,
Well, and the end of the war too.
Yeah, exactly. And it was because of the end of the war. So to say that Pershing had a mark against MacArthur, well, we know he thinks MacArthur is a blowhard at times, but so was Pershing. He just doesn't like somebody grabbing the spotlight out of his spotlight.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you were talking about a lot of what we know about MacArthur's actions, because he doesn't tell us himself, come from other sources, what they saw, what they remembered. And I mean, obviously Pershing was hearing substantial things about MacArthur's leadership on the battlefield, because in his efficiency report, he basically says this is our greatest battlefield commander in this war. So I mean, that he qualifies that obviously with MacArthur having a high estimate of his own abilities. But I mean, I think that's high praise from someone like Pershing. And he's not just going to say that if he doesn't have firsthand knowledge, or at least he's not hearing these things about.
And Menaher and Summerall as well. Summerall, he's a guy who's there at the Boxer Rebellion. He's a guy who's, been in the Spanish-American War. He's seen people, he knows how to judge people. So does Menaher. Menaher's a classmate of Pershing's. He's a great friend of Pershing's. But these guys, they look at MacArthur as being very, very special.
Right.
And so does everybody in the Rainbow. I mean, those guys will go to their grave thinking he was the king. The main thing is I'd like to see Lloyd Ross's diary. Supposedly, this guy Farrell had the only access to it, and the family still has it. At least that's what he said. Because I was like, "Where is this thing?" "Oh, I can't tell you that." I'm like, "Okay."
MacArthur does mention later on the heroism of those around him. Do you want to touch on any of those stories?
Well, the big one is Ross. In 49, it was Lloyd Ross's birthday, and the Rainbow, and I think the American Legion was having this big birthday party for him in Red Oak, Iowa. And MacArthur gets a telegram in Japan, where he is. And they're saying, we're having this party for Ross, could you send us some words? And MacArthur said, the glory of the Rainbow rests on the shoulders of Lloyd Ross. He's the guy. That kind of says it, and that's the way he would be with, all these other people, about that were in the Rainbow. Dwayne Dietrich, he's the guy that donated that stuff up to Michigan, but he was on our board. And he knew MacArthur as a kid, and he would hear MacArthur's going to be at this place. He would go there, and MacArthur would talk to him because this, Dietrich was this smart guy. And even as a kid, and he said that they were at a place, it was during a Chicago thing, and MacArthur was there talking with people, and somebody all of a sudden came up and had a rainbow pin on and said MacArthur was immediately just grabbed him by the shoulders, it was just like, my boy, just that's the way he looked at it, and it was the closest thing to his heart, really.
Any final thoughts?
No, I think we had, talked before about, when does he really deserve it?
The Medal of Honor.
Yeah, and
would this have been a more legitimate award than 1942?
Yeah. And I think MacArthur recognized that what 42 was basically for everybody in a propaganda, ploy or, tool. But I think that, Veracruz he probably deserved it more than anything because that was just out of control, and but this one, I don't know.
I think scholars would probably have maybe a slightly different opinion of him if he was a Medal of Honor recipient from the First World War as opposed to the Second World War.
Well, Wild Bill Donovan gets it there at the battle there at Landres Saint-Georges. So, and he was a colonel, so it's not a general officer, but they did meet him out, for that battle. And Thomas Niebuhr, he gets one for his work at the top of the code. He was a private in the Alabama. So there are the Medal of Honor winners. It's just MacArthur's not one of them at that time.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you have questions, suggestions, or comments, we want to hear from you. You can find us on Twitter at MacArthur1880, on Facebook as the General Douglas MacArthur Memorial, or you can email MacArthurMemorial@norfolk.gov.